you know, oh, all right, got it. Recording. Yeah, we have around 10, let's see, 13 participants. So that's a good number. I mean, we could still wait longer if you want, but you know, it's enough. It's a quorum, I think. If you want to get started, ready whenever.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Up to me.
Yes,
All
I'm
right.
fine with it.
Okay, well, let me just introduce myself to everyone. So my name is Richard Preston, and I'm from the MITRE Corporation. And so if you've never heard of MITRE before, MITRE is a not-for-profit company that operates what are called federally funded R&D centers. So you don't really need to know what that is, but basically what it means is that we try to solve problems for the federal government and government agencies. And so, as you can imagine, we have a lot of problems. And so that's really what engineering is about, is solving problems. And so that's kind of what I do. I'm an engineer and I try to solve problems. And so technology is a way to enable us to solve problems. And so that's, you know, the thing that I'm really excited about, passionate about. And so you all are doing a hackathon this weekend. This is fantastic. This is problem solving. And so I'm hoping that all of you are getting excited about this, and maybe you'll be interested to consider a career in engineering. So yeah, I mean, why are we here? Why are we doing this? MITRE has a vision that we're pioneering for a better future, and you all are obviously the future. So we want to try to inspire you guys to you know, pursue careers in STEM, and also just talk to you and be somebody that that you can reach out to. I'll probably give my email in the chat later. But yeah, this is kind of where it starts out. Is this is actually how I first got into coding, is learning how to program in the web. And so this workshop, we're going to go through just a little bit of background on the web, just in case there's folks that, I mean, everyone uses the web, but like understand the fundamental concepts, the technology behind it. And then we'll go right into like playing around with the technology and trying to build your own kind of mock website. So hopefully that's exciting to you all. And please feel free, post comments in the chat. I have it open so I can watch and see. And you know, if you want to turn your camera on and talk at any point, that's cool too. It's not too many of us, so I don't think it would derail us. So yeah, first of all, trying to get, well, as I mentioned, the background. So the internet. What is the internet? Well, everyone is on the internet. We're on the internet right now all the time. But I really want to distinguish between the internet versus the World Wide Web. So the internet is an interconnected network, that's where the name internet comes from, of computers that links devices all over the world. So this is the physical network that allows the information to travel from one computer to the other. And there's many different protocols and different applications and different ways that information gets passed around in different use cases. So you can think about email, you could think about you know, browsing the web, as you probably most familiar with. But there's many other use cases for the internet. It's basically just a way of passing information around. This is a picture, I think, is from 2005, so ancient history, of the connectedness of the internet. And obviously now it's probably exploded way more than this. But really, this is just most amazing technology to me, that in the last several decades we've been able to connect everybody all over the world. So that's the internet. So what is the web, or the World Wide Web? This is an information system that exists on top of the internet. So on the web, you have content which is published by servers, and it's typically accessed through a browser. You're all very familiar with this, I'm sure. And so this is almost, you could say, a protocol or a standard where if you have some server, some computer that's connected to the internet, you can essentially publish the web content and people can access it through a browser. And so when we're talking about web programming, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about basically building some application or page or whatever it is in that browser box for people to access. So this workshop focuses on the three really fundamental web technologies. We have HTML, which when you say HTML, want to think about the content that is on the page, excuse me. And then also CSS, which CSS, when you hear CSS, you think about how you're going to style the page, as well as JavaScript, which is how you would define the behavior of a web page. Now, probably we don't have enough time to go through all of this today, so probably we'll just focus on HTML and maybe a little bit of CSS, and then I think hopefully you all have the slides. You can kind of go out on your own and pursue it further. So just starting with HTML, let's bring it back to an analogy of like, what is the motivation behind web and behind HTML? So I've got a question for you. So let's say you're writing a document about some topic that you're excited about. In this case, let's say it's cats, right? And so you're writing some document, you want to share it with your friends. The question is, how would you structure it? Like, what kinds of content would you want to include in your document? And feel free to type in the chat, or you can say out loud. But so, for example, like I'm gonna start writing down. Maybe, well, nobody uses like handwriting these days, but like I'm gonna open up a word processor or something and start writing a document. So yeah, you might have a header, you might have a title, you might have paragraphs, any other kinds of content, pictures. Yep, different category. Oh, so you guys are already ahead with understanding the HTML tags and everything. So maybe we can go through HTML pretty quickly then in that case. So yeah, there's all these different types of content that you might want to include on a page. And one of the really important things about web is references. So not only do you want to have a lot of content that you have on your page, but you might want to say, oh yeah, and I found out about this from this other place, and you might want to have a reference and a link that somebody can go to. This is like one of the main features of the web originally, anyway. Okay, so the question now is, how do we do this, right? So we know we need all these kinds of content, but how would we tell a computer that the different types of content that we're including on a page? So this is where we come to the idea of markup language. So maybe you've heard of HTML as like kind of a programming language. In my view, it's not really a programming language. It's a markup language. In fact, HTML stands for hypertext markup language. And what a markup language allows you to do is describe document content in a format that computers can understand. So this is as opposed to a word processor where it's kind of like what you see is what you get. You open Microsoft Word and you say, all right, I'm doing a title now, and then you type in the title and you can see the title. And as a human, you can read that. And when you print it out, you can see that. But we want to now be more clear and specific about the content that we have so that machines or computers can understand it. So I think some have already seen this, but for those of you that haven't, this is an example of an HTML element, which is a piece of content that's defined as having a certain type. And so so this is kind of the syntax, or the way that you would describe this in HTML. And I'll go through kind of the anatomy of this. So you have these angle brackets, which denote what are called tags. And the tags are what define HTML elements. So the type of the content is specified with the element name. In this case, H1 means heading 1. So it's a heading 1 element. So it's like, the top level header. And then you put the content in between the start and the end tags. And you use a backslash to denote the end tag, which closes the element. So this is a very clear way to say, okay, this is where the content, my heading 1 content starts, and this is where it ends. All right, any questions on this? And feel free, I think Zoom might allow you to like say, go faster or something. So if you've already seen all this, then we can zoom through it. But if you haven't seen it before and you want me to slow down or go further into something, we can do that too. All right, so this is a workshop, so I want it to be interactive. So let's try this out. So everyone on your, open another browser tab and go to jsfiddle.net. This is one of these websites that allows you to write HTML content and see the results very easily. So you don't have to do it locally. So if you go to jsfiddle.net, it should look like this. Let me zoom in here. Oh, someone's on their phone. Okay, well, you could still probably get it on your phone. If you're on your phone though, you can just follow along. Or you can go find a laptop somewhere. I don't know. Ask your parents. So, all right. So the way this website works is allows you to write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and that is compiles into a web page, and then you see the results down here. So I wanted everyone just try out that example. So we said H1, and then we had something like cats or something. What was it? Cat types. You could put whatever you want in there. Excuse me. And then you click run. And there we have, there's our content that's being displayed. Yeah, so you have to do this in a browser. And I think we can get rid of this console. If you click on settings, where is it? Console, get rid of that one. The run is up here in the top left. If yours looks a little bit different, it might be you're on a different platform, a different screen size. If you click on settings, you can change the layout. I like the classic one, but you guys can play around with it, whatever you like. And so here you can see the HTML element here. We have the opening tag H1. You notice that it didn't matter. I could put this on the same line, and it doesn't matter where I put it, because the machine, the computer, can read this and understand that anything in between this start tag and the end tag, that's a heading 1 element. All right. Please, if you get left behind, type in the chat and we'll go over it again. But I know that there's some that are, have seen some of this before, so I want to keep this exciting. So yeah, everyone try doing this. I just showed this, so I don't need to ask this question. And then try changing the content around. Instead of cat types, it's something else. All right, now, and here's something for everyone to try. Try adding a second element, maybe a heading 1 element. How would you do that? Right, so we could, of course, we can have a second element here. Remember, H1 is just like the type. It's the tag or the type of the content. So we can have as many of these H1s as we want. So here is another heading 1. Then we click run, and then we get that back. All right, of course, there are other types besides heading 1. So they can have paragraphs, which is very important. You need to be able to have paragraphs when you're writing a document. And so yeah, try this. Try typing in something like this. The content, again, you can put whatever you want, but use the P as the open and close tags. And something interesting to notice here, when you type something like this in, how does the result compare with what you typed? Is there anything different about the code that you type in versus the output in the bottom right of the JS Fiddle? Like, for example, what happens if the line is longer than the width of the result box? Are folks following along, or give me some feedback? Should I go faster or slower, or if you are here, you can ask the question. Okay, great. I know it's hard. You like type in chat while you're trying to do the workshop examples. So do we understand what I'm asking here? Like when you type in the paragraph, let's say you have a lot of text that you're typing in the code. When you hit run, does it look the exact same on the output as when you type it in? Like for example, if I have like a really long line, what happens? Let's try it out. So if I said paragraph, this is a very long line of text. The browser should format this paragraph automatically. So when I hit run, you see that it didn't put the line break in the same place. So the point here is that there's some separation between the code, the description of the content, and how it's actually being rendered. So this is kind of proof that the browser is reading this material and then compiling some way and outputting it in a format. So that's cool. So there's different ways, because somebody said, Anya said that if you have a really long word, it might make a scroll bar because it doesn't want to break it up. So like, let's say if I have, so she said like A or whatever. Oh, let's get it even longer. Now see, the browser is somewhat smart. It doesn't want to break up the text because it thinks this is a word. So it doesn't want to break it up. So it will instead extend the width of the display and add a scroll bar. So there's other properties of this too. So if, for example, like what happens if you add extra spaces and returns? You can try that. So like if I say, playing around with white space, and I run this. So what happened? Yeah. Because again, it is trying to format this content. So it doesn't respect this white space. It's not that it doesn't like it. It likes it fine, right? It can read this. The browser can read this paragraph, but the rules that govern the or the standards that allow a browser to take this content and render it would say that it ignores white space. So the point here is that this is some content that we're describing in code, and then the browser is taking that, reading it, and formatting it and outputting it to display. So here's a question now. If it doesn't like the white space, how would you define multiple paragraphs? Or how did you have a second paragraph? Yeah, so you just have another element. So you'd say paragraph, here is a second paragraph. Sweet. Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you're following. Yeah, so I mentioned there's other types of, there's all kinds of types of elements. One is called BR for break. And so if you put that in there, it's going to give you an extra space. All right, so one other thing about HTML syntax is you can actually nest elements. So you can have elements within other elements. This is a simple example of that. We have a list, in this case, an ordered list. So we have an ordered list, which is itself an element, OL. And then inside that, we have list items, LI. So try this out and see what you get in the browser. And as always, this content inside could be anything you want. But these tags are read by the computer and matter what they are, because this P means a paragraph. Yeah, so it gives you an ordered list. So notice that you didn't have to type the numbers. It put the numbers for you. So let me show that quickly. Oops. There we go. So let's say we have personality types, and then ordered list, and then we have list items. And there we go. All right, so how would you like add or remove items from the list? Yeah, you could just delete this line or add a new one. So however many items you have, you just add that in there. And what about an unordered list? In other words, a bullet list. Yeah, try that out. So if we do UL instead of OL, we hit run, then it makes it bullets. All right. So here's another type of tag, another type of elements. The hyperlink. So you can have inside a tag, you can have what are called attributes, which provide additional information about the element. So this is an A tag, which is a hyperlink. And you have this href attribute, which stands for hypertext reference. And it allows you to specify the destination of the link when you click on it. So you have this opener tag, and inside the opening tag, you put the attribute and the information in there. Notice how I put this link in quotes, because this is the link. This is the link that we would need to go to when we click on the link or the address. And then you still, again, put the content inside the tags. There's also a special type of tag for images, which doesn't have a closed tag. It just has this opening tag. And so you say image img, and then you do source src as the attribute and put in the source of the image. So you can have this be a link to some other place in the internet where it's going to go and get the image, or you can have it locally, or if you're running it locally in a browser. So try these ones out. And then see if you modify these attributes, what happens? Can you change the hyperlink destination or show a different picture on here? All right, let's try it out. So I have a link. So by the way, bonus points if you know why it's A. I knew this and I just forgot it. So if some of you can remember, find out, you get bonus points. Might be address or something. No, this is an attribute. So you can have, so tags or elements can have attributes. And the attributes is kind of like information, additional information about that, that element. So in this case, we have an A element and we have the href, hypertext reference, and we have the content cats. So now I click on this link. Oh, it opened it right in here. Okay. So if you can open a new tab like that, then you go. Anchor tag, that's what it is. I remember that now, anchor. Okay, and then you have images. So I said you could do something like this. This is a website, Picsum is a website that gives you like a random image of a certain size. So here we go, here's our image. Nice. So yeah, and that's, you know, that's basically the everything you need to know pretty much about the basics of HTML. All of the tags, the different types of content that you can have are all documented online. This is my go-to one, developer.mozilla.org. Let me paste that link in the chat. Can I do that? Maybe I can go to the link here. Doesn't seem to want to let me go here. There we go. Paste that in the chat. And so this would give you all of the different types of content that you can use. Whoops. So here's just an example, and I'll give you, let's say 5 minutes and play around with this and see if you can come up with your own web page. And by the way, if you want to share your web page, you can post it in chat. There's a way to share the link. Actually might, let's see if I can get, see if they still have this one around. It might have, oh yeah, okay. So here's that same example. And if you hit save, then copy the link that looks something like this. It's going to be jsfiddle.net/some string. Then you can paste it in chat and share it. Other links? You mean like changing the image or the link, like the anchor tag? You would change this to some other link. You mean like instead of in this little box in here, in like your own, in a full browser window? Yeah, so if you read ahead in the slides, it describes how to do that. You can, so all this code that we're writing in this HTML box, you can write that in just a text document. And then you can open that in a browser and then it will read that and it will render it. But like, that's slightly complicated. So we don't need to do that this morning, but that's something you can check out on your own time. All right, any questions so far? Anybody working on their website want to share? And like I said, there's not too many of us, so if you want to put your mic on, then that would be fine. Yeah, so if you hit save, and then just click on save, and then it will change the link up here. It will add a little string of random numbers up here. And then you could just copy this entire link and put it in the chat. And then I'll click on it and share it. I'm trusting you. Must be school appropriate. All right, let's check it out. This is Anya's. Cats are the best animals on earth. They're adorable. They can kill. Don't slobber. That's great. Most likely not a cat. That's great. All right, and Ethan's got one. Very cool. Cheese. Cheese is cheese. Wow, this is a big picture. So yeah, you can, if you go check out the documentation for image, you can actually set the width and the height of the image as well. So if like this is too big, maybe probably you like the size, the large size, but you can change it. So you could say something like image source, and then I think you could do, is this going to work? Width equals 200 pixels. Usually you do it in the style section, but this might work. Yeah, that worked. All right, anyone else? Do videos work like photos? No. Yeah, you would, I don't know what if there's a video, yeah, there's a video tag. So you could check that out. So this would embed a video player. There's other ways to embed video. Video is a little bit more tricky than images, because oftentimes the way that video works is it will be streaming the video. So it will be contacting the server and then say like, give me bits of the video over time, because it's too much data to load all at once. Usually with images, like it'll go out to the server and say, okay, give me all the content for this page. And so it'll get all of the HTML and then also get all the images. Maybe there's some circumstances where you might like load the images as you need them or as you see them. But yeah, with video, you don't want to like load the entire video, especially what if it's like a really long YouTube video or something like that. You don't want to load it all at once. So you would like have some way of like streaming it. All right. So people are still fiddling with their website. That's great. In the meantime, those that are done or they want the next thing, just going back to see if you're paying attention at first. So yeah, what is the purpose of markup languages? Or what is a markup language? Or anybody got any ideas? Yeah, so HTML is a markup language, hypertext markup language. And this is the markup language that we primarily use on the web. And so if you write a document in HTML, then your browser will be able to understand it. But I'm just saying more generally, the concept of markup languages. So yeah, it's in this case, HTML is for making web pages, but generally the idea of a markup language is just simply a way to describe document content that computers can understand. So there's other types of markup languages, but HTML is the most common one, most popular one. There's also like XML, you may have heard of that. Other code like Python also markup. Not usually, no. Usually Python, if you're writing Python code, this is like a programming language, not a markup language. In other words, you're defining the behavior of of how a computer would work. This is not really defining the behavior, it's the content. If we're going back to this slide here, HTML, we're talking about the content on the page. So you're not really saying how it's styled, you're not really saying how it behaves, you're just saying what is on the document. What is it, here's the information, here's the title, here's the paragraphs, etc. What are all the images? But you probably, if you're playing around with your web page, maybe you feel it's kind of lacking a little bit. So maybe you feel like there's something missing, right? We have all the content here, but it doesn't look that great. So what aspects of the design would you like to be able to change? Okay, background color, sure. So you might want to center it. You might say like, well, why is this in the left? I want it in the center because it looks cooler, it looks more professional. Okay, yeah, so alignment. What else? Borders, yep, borders around images. Might look at the margins, right? Like this is right up against the left side of the screen. Maybe I want some margins on there so it's not as crowded. Someone mentioned borders. You might want to change the font. Maybe you don't like this default font. What is this, Times New Roman or something? Maybe you want Comic Sans and make all of your website visitors' eyes bleed. Size, yeah, of course. Colors, sizes, background. Yeah, I think you all hit on everything. So the way we do this, style the web page, is not actually with HTML. We do this with CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And this is a different type of language. So we talked about markup language, but now we have a style sheet language. So style sheet languages allow you to describe document styles and specify how the content is presented. This is a pretty common idea in engineering and programming. It's called separation of concerns. So we have different types of ideas and things that we want to be able to do. We have content, we have style, we have behavior, and we have different ways of specifying those things. So we're not trying to do everything with the same tool. We're kind of breaking down the problem into different parts. So the HTML would concern the content, and then CSS would concern the style. And this is an example of a CSS rule. So this is the syntax. So first you would put the selector, which specifies which elements of the page this rule is going to apply to. What is this going to style? Style rules are enclosed in these curly braces. So maybe if you've done, Python doesn't really use curly braces, but if you used any JavaScript or Java or C++ or C#, like many programming languages use the brackets to kind of enclose content or enclose elements and things like that, or instructions. Okay, so this is a rule, a CSS rule, and they're declared in this form. You have the property that you want to specify, colon, the value. So in this case, if we want to set the alignment of all the heading ones on the page to center, we would do something like this. You'd say the text align should be centered. All right, so let's try this out. Go back to JS Fiddle and try putting in this box here. This is the CSS box. I'll go back to mine. And let's say, okay, we have heading 1, and we put in text align, text dash align, center. And so you may notice, if you haven't done a ton of programming before, the spelling matters a lot, right? The computer only knows what you're talking about if it's exactly spelled right. So in this case, we have H1. We're talking about the heading 1 elements. Text align. This is a keyword which says we're looking at the text alignment, and then center means it should be centered. So we run this, and now it's going to center my heading 1. All right, so yeah, what happened to your H1 element? We just showed that, it centered it. But here's an interesting question. So is the style rule applied to all heading 1 elements or just the first one on the page? See if you could investigate that and find the answer. Yeah. Yeah, this is just how this selector works. So when you are, when you have this syntax, we say H1, we're saying, okay, generally speaking, whenever I have a heading 1, I want it to be formatted in this way, styled in this way. So if I were to have a second one, second heading 1, this one is also centered. And then how would you right align the text? Any ideas? Yep, just instead of center, you put right. Because this is the value that we're setting. So the text align could be left, it could be centered, it could be right. I don't know if there's any other ones. You can look in the documentation. But so if you put right here instead of center, then you would get a right aligned text. Ethan's mind is blown. That's exciting. All right, I'm gonna move on and talk about kind of a special HTML element that we haven't looked at yet, but is important. It's called the body element. And this is very typical on a web page. You would enclose, or I would say almost universal or required. The JS Fiddle adds this kind of automatically, but you probably didn't see I snuck it in there on purpose because this is a typical way you would define HTML. You would include this body tag to say this is where the body of the content is. So you would need to, like, if you're writing in your own file locally, you would need to have this body tag, which encloses all the content of the page. And so this is like the entire window, basically. So if we style this body, then we're applying styles to pretty much the whole page. So try this out and see what it does. And one thing you can do is you can try add these one at a time. So you could say, like, you set up your body. I'll show you what I mean. You could say, all right, we're going to style our body, and then I'm going to say margin auto. Oh, and I don't know if I emphasize this, but you need a semicolon at the end of these. So you can put these in one at a time and see what they do. So sorry, yeah, so try that. All right, so you guys figured out what these rules do? So the font one is pretty easy to, it's pretty intuitive. It affects the font. So we could change the font that we're using in the page. What about these width and padding? These are very important in web design. So yeah, again, I think the width is pretty intuitive. It controls the width of the page. So if you set the width to 400 pixels, then it would make sure the content fits in 400 pixels. It wouldn't go outside of that. I can show that here. So if we said width 400 pixels, let me zoom out here so that you can see. So without this, you can see that it took up the entire page. And with this, it only fits in 400 pixels. And so since I have this auto margin on, auto means put automatic margins in the left and right so that the content is centered. So this is kind of nice. I kind of like the way this looks, that the content is now in the center of the page and not like all the way to the left of the time. And yeah, padding just adds some space around it. So without this, it would go right to the top of the page, and maybe I want to add some space around it, so I do this. And then I mentioned the font. The reason why we like to specify a font family in web is because we like to allow our web page to be like universally accessible. So for whatever reason, someone might not have the Arial font. And so if they don't have that, we want them to still be able to read the page. And so it would default to Helvetica or any Helvetica font that they happen to have. And then if they don't have that, then it would be any sans serif font that they happen to have, which is like just a generic thing. It's like font that doesn't have the little doohickeys on the letters. How do you make it Comic Sans? You can find the font name. I think it's, let's see, Comic Sans. Is this a thing? I didn't like it. So you can find out what the font name for that is. Oh, looks like we're heading close to the end of the time. Should have been paying closer attention to the time. So mentioned, yeah, definitely we can send the slides out. So let me put my, yeah, I think we can get them from Mel. Yeah, we can explain the padding. So the padding is, what if I do this? Say border, 1 pixel solid. Now you can see where on the page our content is, our body is. So if I remove this padding, you can see what happens. There's no space in between the outside of the body and the content inside it. So if I add that padding back in, now you can see there's a nice padding, there's a nice space there. It's distinct from margin because margin is the space between the outside of the element and the element itself. So you can see if we put margin auto, that caused this margin here to exist in between the left hand side of the page and the element, and the same thing on the right. If we were to delete that, there wouldn't be any margin. It would just be right up against the left side of the page. And we could say margin 20 pixels, and then it would move it out. But I like margin auto because it automatically picks the margin for you so that it's centered on the page. All right, so it is 12, so I don't want to keep anybody from anything they're trying to do, but I can also stay longer. So, yeah, what's the plan?
Yeah, if people are willing to stay longer instead of working on their projects, I'm definitely fine with keeping the workshop open. It does depend on you guys.
All right, so yeah, I mean, we can like finish up talking about CSS and then I think that'll be good.
Yeah, sounds good.
So because we just started a little bit late too, so
yeah.
So yeah, and let me just have to be in the project. Yeah, so you would put this stuff in this CSS box. Is that what your question is asking? So yeah, you saw I defined a border, and for the body. Somebody asked about like, how do I make a border? This is how you would do it. So you don't have to do it for your body. You could do it for an image. You could do it for whatever. But this is the syntax for defining a border. One thing that's very important with, again, web design is color. So you can use a predefined name, in this case, black. It knows what black is. Or you can also define color with setting the RGB values, the red, green, blue values. So you didn't know this, the way that computers create color is with 3 different colored lights, essentially. And by turning on the brightness of each different color light, it tricks your eyes into seeing color. So you can define how bright those are and what the ratios are between the colors to make whatever color you want. So why don't you guys try this? HTML is like the entire window. This HTML element means like this is all the content. Body is like the kind of the window that you're looking at, and then HTML is the overall thing. This is the highest level HTML element. So let's just try this out. Put in the image. Instead of it putting in there, let's do it down here. Image, border, 1 pixel, solid. And you can change obviously the width of it. You can change the style of it. You could do, I don't remember. I think it's, you can look up the syntax or the documentation on that one. And then this is one thing I wanted to show because it's kind of makes the page look a lot nicer, is setting a background color. So the typical way you do that is in the HTML tag. And so you'd specify a background color. And in this case, I'm going to have a custom color. So you'd use RGB and then specify how much red, how much green, how much blue between 0 and 255. And now we have background color, and you can see the kind of the main content of the page, the body of the page sort of pops out. Now it looks like a document. So what happens if you use body instead of HTML? So if you put this in here instead, it's going to make the entire thing gray. But if we do it in HTML, it doesn't set the background color of the body. The body is still white by default. You could set the background color of the body to be something else. But yeah. So you can play around with those numbers in there and get a different color. So yeah, play around with it and see if you come up with, oh, somebody else had a page that, oh, Ethan again, let's see. Oh, same one, nice. Yeah, so it works different in art class versus computer class. So it's really based on our eyes. So our eyes have red, green, and blue cones in them, which is how we see color. And so that's why when we're have a computer screen, we have those colors so that it tricks your eye into seeing those colors. Whereas in art, you really, it's more real in the sense of you're creating those colors with paints, we're mixing them together. But at a fundamental level, color is just something that we perceive. It's not really a it's not really a physical phenomenon outside of us. But that's another can of worms. So yeah, I think this is a good place to stop. I have some more around classes. So you can define a class of HTML elements, and you could set the class wherever you want. And then, so like, for example, you could say, I want to have a class that always underlines elements. And then anytime I have an HTML element and I put in class equals underline in the attributes, then it would be underlined. So it's just a convenient way, so you don't have to style every single individual element. And this one is kind of cool, making it interactive. There's these things called pseudo class selectors that would apply a rule set when the element is in a specified state. So you could say, I want to make something bold whenever you hover over the element. So I'm going to move on from that though, and go to just the final example here. Again, there is there's a documentation for this. And so let me, whoops. So let me go to this example. And in fact, I'll post this link in the chat so that you can check it out and play around with it. But here's my final web page. You can see as I hover over these, they get bold. You'll be able to see the whole thing. So yeah, that's it. That's all we have time for. So happy to answer any questions. And if you want to contact me, I think you can do that. Hopefully, I probably do it through Melvin. Probably the best, rather than like having everyone email me separately. And yep, we'll send the slides out. I think you guys have the slides. You should have the slides somewhere. So yeah, any questions? All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Oh, I think you muted.
Thank you for being here, Richard. That was a very impressive workshop. I really liked it. Thank you for being engaged, everybody, and being respectful. I hope you can all utilize what you learned today in your projects. And yeah, also MITRE is providing a second workshop, STEM in the Age of TikTok, tomorrow. So I hope I'll see you guys there too. Thank you.
Great. All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Have a great day. All right. Bye.